night breaking, we are taking, this is our time. Just breathe, this won't be a hard fight. The truth cash out in the night.
Welcome to Sasquatch Unredacted. How you doing, Richard?
I am doing outstanding, but I hope to get better later.
Excellent, excellent. Now, before we get started, we have a guest. Excited about this one, Todd Neiss. We had a little bit of miscommunication with time zones, unfortunately, but he is just now joining us. So we're going to bring him on. And normally, before we interview people, we talk beforehand before we start rolling and everything. So we're going to get to know him along with you guys. So we're going to bring Todd Neiss on. Todd, what's up, buddy?
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's going good. Glad you could join us. Sorry, miscommunication in the time zones there.
That happens. That happens quite often, actually.
Yeah. So
I never know what time zone I'm in.
Do you travel a lot?
Well, I'm from the Pacific Northwest, so it's hard for me to change gears up, but I'm getting used to it. I'm here in Arkansas in Central Time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Good to go. So, Todd, I personally know you're the first encounter that got you involved in this because I'm like Richard. I am former military, so I really paid attention to other military members who have had sightings. In fact, that is probably 90% of the reason why I came forward with the things that I started to learn is, seeing other people that were in the military that were willing to talk about their experiences. So first of all, as much as you hate to hear it, as much as Richard hates to hear it, and as much as I hate to hear it, thank you for your service. It's good to have you.
Thank you.
Well, what we like to do is basically just shut our mouths and let you talk. You tell us what you want to tell us, your story, how you got started, the things you're involved in, and whatever. Also, I noticed from doing interviews that sometimes I got tired of just saying the same stories over and over again. If there's anything that you want to talk about that you normally don't talk about, feel free to do that too. So we are giving you the stage, and we're going to mute ourselves, and then we'll come back and we will ask you questions that we have and other people have. Sound good?
So you want that top secret squirrel stuff? Is that what you're fishing for? Okay.
Include fax numbers. Include fax numbers.
Oh.
Locations, GPS, all that good stuff, But
okay.
If you want to, go ahead and start us out. I'm going to mute me and Richard, and you have the floor.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure. I've heard a lot about you guys, and it's really an honor to be on your show. So just to kind of get your audience up to speed as far as how I got involved, I was a reluctant participant in this baptism into Bigfoot. Growing up in the Pacific Northwest, of course, you hear about Bigfoot, Sasquatch, what have you, but I'd relegated it to an urban legend, a good campfire tale to get the kids on edge, and I really didn't put much into it. I wasn't completely against the idea, but this you can see, I guess I was somewhat agnostic, if you will. But that all changed for me on April 3rd, 1993, a little over 31 years ago. I was a combat engineer, and as you know, that involves a lot of explosives. And on that particular day, we had access to some private timberland in the Oregon Coast Range. If you're familiar with, if you folks are familiar with Seaside, it's in the very northwest corner of the state of Oregon. And anyway, we were probably, I want to say about 8 to 10 miles east of Seaside, again on private timberland. It's not accessible to the general public, but even so, as you can imagine, with the for safety concerns and the danger of the work we were doing, we had very heavy security to make sure nobody accidentally wandered into our operation. And that operation consisted of 3 different gravel quarries, each being a different scenario for us for training purposes. The first quarry, we did cutting charges where we had steel I-beams. One of the things we do in our counter mobility format is to be able to, for instance, blow up a bridge, drop a bridge to deny the enemy use of that egress. And so we had steel I-beams out, and there's a bit of a science to how you shear steel I-beams, but C4 does the trick real handily. It gets about 6 times the temperature of the sun for just a split second, and melts steel like butter. It's a beautiful thing. But so we had done that. Excuse me. We had done the I-beam deal. Went back, checked our work, standard SOP, standard operating procedure, and then went on to the second site where we had a mock minefield. This was surface laid anti-tank mines. In this other quarry, we had to run a couple of ring mains of det cord and branch off of those, put blocks of C4 next to the mines, and basically clear a path through the minefield. That'd be the mobility part. So if our movement element got into that sort of predicament, they call us up, we blast a lane through it. So we did that, and then moved on to the third and final site, which was a cratering charge. And in that scenario, it's basically you would use cratering charges, for instance, to blow a road in half so that, again, denying the enemy the use of that road. So our job is just to make sure our guys get through where they got to go, and we stop the bad guys coming in the route that they want to come in on. So we had about 250 pounds of ammonium nitrate that we'd been soaking in diesel fuel for probably 2-3 hours or so prior to this. And so we had a hole there. We put the 2 bags of ammonium nitrate in there, of course, a blasting cap and a fuse cord. And so we lit the fuses, got into our vehicles. There were 5 in total. 2 Humvees up front, deuce and a half, 2.5 ton truck in the middle, and then 2 Humvees bringing up the rear. I happen to be a passenger in that second Humvee in the convoy. And so I sat directly behind the driver, and it was a nice day. You're talking April in the Coast Range. Usually it's pretty nasty weather, but it was a beautiful day, not a cloud in the sky. And so I had the window down as we're driving off down this winding, narrow logging road. And because I wasn't having to focus on driving, I just naturally, having hunted that area for both deer and elk, I was just glancing about looking for deer and elk or any kind of wildlife, and I got a little more than I bargained for, because we started around this really wide sweeping right hand turn, and the second blast site, the one we did the minefields at, came into view. And I'm looking down there, and I see these 3 dark figures standing right out in the middle of the quarry, right where we had literally detonated maybe an hour, maybe a little more than an hour prior. And the first thing that came to my mind was, what the hell are those people doing down there? Because we don't send people off willy-nilly, onesie, twosie, threesies. We have to have 100% accountability. Everybody has to be within eyesight. It's that dangerous of a task. And so to see 3 individuals on their own, just something didn't register with me. So I hardly got the thought out of my head, what are those people doing down there? It was just like, what are those? Those aren't people. And I say that because, well, first, I mean, they were black from head to foot, not a stitch of clothing on them. They were huge, way too big to be human. They were all standing on two legs, three abreast. They were watching our convoy across the ravine, and but I mean, just the profile gave it away real quick. The arms were way too long. I mean, they went down below their knees, all three of them, and even the legs were disproportionately long compared to that of a human torso. The head sat squarely on the shoulders, but pretty much your typical, description of these things. Again, I was not a believer at all, and so I'm trying to take this in. I'm literally in shock at this point because I just can't unsee what I'm looking at, and I couldn't take my eyes off it. And I had a pretty good long view of them. By that, I mean, I'm saying maybe 25 seconds, almost half a minute. So I mean, 25 seconds doesn't seem very long, but look at your watch for 25 seconds and imagine seeing what I was seeing. It seemed like an eternity. But it was also their behavior, which was quite unusual. I should point out the one in the middle was taller than the two to its left and right. I estimated easily 8 feet, perhaps even 9 feet in height. I mean, picture a plywood sheet is what, 8x4, right? These things were easily 4 feet wide and 8 feet tall for sure. The two that flanked it came up to the shoulders of the larger one in the middle, but by no means were they small or even human size or proportion. But that one in the middle, while it stood there rock steady, didn't really move at all. These two either side of it exhibited this, they were rocking back and forth, side to side, I should say. Like they're just shifting their weight from one foot to the other. And in the process, these long pendulous arms they're swaying down across their kneecaps. And they did that the entire time from the moment I saw them until I lost sight of them 25 seconds later. They were just doing this rocking side to side thing. And so 25 seconds passed. We took another corner. I lost sight of them, and I just kind of collapsed in my seat and trying to wrap my head around what I just saw. And I remember I said something. I said to the guys up front, I said, well, at least somebody is going to get a good view of the blast. And they said, what are you talking about? And I said, there's 3 guys down there. Now, I was on a fishing expedition. I know what I saw. But their response was, no way. There's nobody down there. We're all accounted for. And that's really what I wanted to hear. Again, I can't unsee what I saw. And but in any event, we got down to the staging area, which a safe distance from the impending bomb that was about ready to go off. Wasn't far from where I had seen them. So when we started disembarking from the vehicles, I ran back up the road in the direction we came. It was my hope that I could get to a point where I could view them again. But like I say, everybody had to stay in eyesight of each other. So I went as far as I dared, a couple hundred meters maybe, but there's this damn little berm that blocked my view. And I was really straining to look over that thing, and it caught the attention of one of my fellow soldiers because they call out my name. They say, "Hey, Neiss." And I look to my right, and Sergeant Martin's walking up my direction, and I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "What are you looking at?" And I said, "Well, nothing." And he continued on my direction, and I remember he smoking on a cigarette. And once we got face to face, he kind of looked left and right to make sure nobody was within earshot. And he leaned in and he said, "I don't suppose you saw what I saw down at that second blast site." And I'm like, "Oh, please please, please say what I hope you're going to say. And he did. He said, I said, I don't know, Jeff, what did you see? He said, well, I saw 3 huge hair covered, I don't know, Bigfoot, I guess. And of course, with that, I acknowledged that I had too. And, it was really cool to know that somebody else shared that experience. But even without that corroboration, it wouldn't have changed anything for me. It was a real epiphany, and it changed everything. And I mean everything in my life. And that's what really blows me away, because I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I wouldn't be living where I'm at. I wouldn't have met a number of individuals, and everything that's happened since then is all based on just 25 seconds of my life. And so that's how I got involved, and I've been researching ever since, just to add more out of curiosity on a personal level. But as time has gone on, it's gotten the attention of others, and it's led to me doing some public speaking. Um, uh, Done a lot of podcasts and whatnot, sharing my story and some of my research and some theories and some experiments that I've conducted over the years, that I'm actually experimenting as even now, trying to think outside the box, because nobody's got it right yet. And it's fascinating to think that something like that can exist out there in this day and age, and not have been recognized as a viable species. But I can tell you they do exist. There's no question in my mind, and it would be 20, well, 28, 29 years before I ever saw them again. But I did, on the Omaha Indian Reservation, of all places, on the eastern border of Nebraska. That's a story in of itself. But I've been close to them numerous times. Encounters come in many different forms. The ultimate, the Holy Grail is that visual sighting, but you can experience encounters in the form of vocalizations, for instance. And I've heard plenty over the years, plenty of sounds that cannot be attributed to any known creature. Not even they're just people can confuse certain sounds with other creatures, and I many times have corrected them. For instance, cougars make some pretty god awful screams in the night, and even some coyotes, when they start going off, can make people question what they're listening to. But I'm telling you, when it comes to volume, lung capacity, range, tone, and really quite a variety of vocalizations they can make, when you do hear the real thing, there's no mistake in it. So
Well, what about jump in 1 second, because I'm extremely excited. I have not heard the Oklahoma story. So can you go over that?
Nebraska. Yeah. So I had been conversing online with, and over the phone with, some members of the Omaha tribe for 2.5 years, going on 3 years. They claim that they were having repeated encounters to the point where they claim they've established a relationship with a group of these on the reservation. And I'm thinking, if you ask me to name 5 states in the United States that probably don't have Bigfoot, I think Nebraska would have been right up there, because I'm thinking flat, no forest, cornfields forever kind of thing. But I was really surprised to find out that, right along that, what divides Iowa and Nebraska is the Missouri River. And all down that Missouri River. It goes down in a little bit of a valley, and it's very tree lined, very hilly, mostly hardwoods, pretty thick, dense forest right along that border. So that's where they were having these encounters. And I had seen some videos they had sent, and it involved something that I had put into the paranormal supernatural file, if you will. And because my first go-to when somebody says, they shoot lasers out of their eyes, or they shoot fire out of their butts, whatever. You could say what you want, but if I can't find another example in nature of another species that does what you claim, we really don't have a starting point. And I looked into it. Don't get me wrong. I looked into everything from bioluminescence to electrochemical reactions like fireflies, phosphorescence, you name it. And I kept coming up empty on any animal, especially a mammal, that could produce light in pitch black. Of course, that leaves reflection, but that requires a source of light. I mean, we know, deer, dogs, even humans can reflect some eye color. Yeah, remember the old cameras had the red eye reduction, where it would flash just a second before it took the picture. That was to close your pupils so that you're not getting any reflection off the retina. So every animal to a certain degree has that. Animals with night vision have what they call tapetum lucidum, a layer crystalline cells that sits between the retina and the optic nerve that actually will take in light and bounce it around within the eyeball and basically amplify the light to where it gives them night vision. Not unlike the night vision that you and I have used in the past with the military. It brings in starlight, it brings in, the zodiac light and the lunar light and any sort of dim light. It just amplifies it. I'm sure that's probably where the military got the idea. But but I just hadn't seen it to that extent where they could actually glow. So, but one day I decided to bite the bullet, and I caught a flight out there and spent a week with them on the reservation, and they had a wonderful time. They treated me very well, and I didn't really expect to go out in the field right off the bat. But in fact, I got in on a Saturday. We kind of got to know each other Sunday, and then Monday night we'd go out, and we'd go to this very isolated, narrow road deep in the woods, up above the Missouri River, and a little 2-lane road. Only one place you can pull off. No emergency lane. No, you could. It was just fog line to fog line until this one little gap in the guardrail that we could pull off into. And it was a no light situation. It was, they said, don't even turn on your cell phone. It's got to be pitch black. And I'm okay. It was so dark you couldn't literally not see the hand in front of your face. It was just pitch black. It was so we walked across this road, and I'm just looking into the dark. I really have no idea what's out there. I could tell coming in the headlights that we were in some pretty dense woods. And my native friend yells out in his native language. He yells out, "Oho, Koge!" Silence. And we're waiting. It does it a second time, and I'll be damned. And keep in mind, we would never go out before midnight, and we would be there sometimes 2:30 in the morning. And within about 30 seconds to a minute, boom, I'm seeing light in the woods that looks like eye shine, and I hate that word, by the way. So I'm hoping we can find a better scientific definition for it down the road. But nonetheless, I'm looking out there, and it's I'm like, is that what I think it is? And he goes, yeah, they're blinking, looking left, right, and moving. Because I said my first go-to is to find another animals, another species that can do what you claim they can do. My second go-to is you're being punked. Okay, I just assume that right off the bat. I'm thinking he's got a fob in his pocket, and they put out some LEDs, and I'm getting, no, that wasn't quite, because these things moved. They'd move left, they'd move right, they'd move forward, closer to us. Sometimes they'd move back, and when I say they, I mean more than one. At times we had up to 3 individuals, completely separate from each other, but moving independent of each other. Again, blinking. Sometimes one would go away and then be down to 2, and it was just. But it wasn't just the eye shine; it was the vocalizations that came along with it. That first night we were there. Way off in the distance. What I mean by that, the ones that were engaging us, I would guess, and it's really hard to estimate, with depth perception and distance in the pitch dark, but I would estimate they were 140, 150 feet away and slightly above us on a hill. But that first night, coming from farther back behind where these were, a little off to the left, this one, I don't know what else to say, but sang a song. I've never heard anything like it. And it's sang a verse, I guess, if you want. It was about 5 to 6 seconds long, very high pitch. And so I just in my mind, I just assumed it was a female. Very high pitch, but very, very loud volume. But this 5-second little ditty this thing did was beautiful, quite frankly. There was nothing intimidating about it. It wasn't like the screams or the whoops or the howls or a lot of the vocalizations that many people have heard. This was a song. And the reason I say that, because it changed in rhythm, it changed in notes, in volume, all within like 6 seconds, and it was just amazing. 10 seconds passed by, and she does it again. Not just another tune, but identical, same notes, same volume, just identical. And in the course of a minute, this individual sounded off 4 times, and each time was the same length. It was the same song. And I don't know about you, but as far as I'm concerned, when there is repetition, there is language. Otherwise, it would be some random hoots and howls and whatever. This was identical, repeat, 4 times. And again, it was beautiful. It was almost sounded welcoming. It's like they knew not me, but they certainly knew my friend was there, and his brother were there. But it was just the most amazing thing I've ever heard. And that wasn't the only sounds we heard throughout the week. That's the other thing. If I came up to you and said, "Hey, how'd you like to see Bigfoot tonight?" I don't know about you, but I'd be like, "Oh, yeah," because that's how it happens. You just go out and yeah, okay. I might humor you. I might even go with you just to prove you're wrong. It doesn't happen that way. If it happens that way, I'd be selling tickets and I'd be filthy rich. How about 5 nights in a row, middle of the night, really morning, 2 two different locations. We had interactions every single night in two different locations. We did change up locations once. I want to say it was a Thursday. So this is Monday through Friday. Every night we had contact, and by contact I mean they would call out to them, they'd show up, and I again, I never would have thought that was even possible, but it seemed pretty obvious to me that they had, in fact, established a relationship, which was wild, absolutely wild. In fact, I consider that particular trip probably my highlight of my research. In fact, I even sent other people back there after this had happened, telling them, because if it was that consistent, I was fairly certain that I could tell somebody, you need to go back there. I'll hook you up with these guys, and you tell me if you didn't experience what I did. And in fact, I literally had I sent a couple of a producer and director of a film company went out, and they actually called me from the field and said, "Dude, we're looking at them right now. This is amazing." So I don't know what to tell you. There was a lot of different crazy stuff that happened in that. And I'm sorry, you gonna say something?
Yeah, I got about 1,000 questions. So what?
Me too.
Now, I'm just assuming this, but you seem to come from kind of the same school of thought that I do when it comes to, well, I'll just say what I think. I do recognize that there is a spiritual aspect to our reality, but I've never put Sasquatch in that department, even though I have seen a little bit of crossover. Nothing. I've experienced the spiritual aspect of reality on my property and the Sasquatch activity, but never at the same time. So I've drawn a line between the two in other areas where I've had where we had our daytime sightings. There was no type of paranormal activity at all or anything like that. So am I right in assuming that that's kind of the way you felt about it until you got to that point? I guess the question is this luminescence, the eye shine itself. It's very confusing to me because it seems to always end up being, or a lot of times, being attached to the paranormal or spiritual side of aspect or of this aspect of this whole
I thought the same
thing.
thing.
And I've had night after night after night of interactions, of vocalizations, of breaking, you name it. But I've hardly ever seen any eye shine. So it's crazy to me. Now, I believe you 100%, but I would love to know, what do you think the difference is? Why do you think there's...
Well, okay, and I'm right there with you. I've always sided on the biological, scientific side, flesh and blood. And although I have many acquaintances, some close friends even, who have tended to lean toward the paranormal, supernatural side, I have humored them and been polite and respectful to them, and honestly, I don't doubt that they experienced what they claim to have. My thing is their interpretation of how that happened. So here's the thing. When I had to get on that plane after literally eating crow, when it came to this particular phenomena, I had a long little chat with myself and said, all right, wise guy, explain what you just witnessed. And so that set me on a journey to find some way to explain it. And it didn't take too long when I got back, because I'm just like, how are they generating this light, or are they generating this light? Is there some other possible explanation for it? And I had been home a couple of months when a program came on. I don't know if it was Discovery Channel, History Channel, what have you. It was a 3-part series called Earth at Night. And if you ever get a chance to watch it, please do. It's no pun intended. It's very enlightening. This film crew, obviously a very big budget film team, went out with some extremely high tech camera equipment that could literally pick up animals in the dark with even without casting a big infrared light. Very, very high tech stuff. And they went on every continent but Antarctica. That's why I say big budget. They travel around the whole world, every country damn near you can think of, and they wanted to film what animals that are active at night, because this is a viewpoint that a lot of people have never seen. How do they act, and how do they act at night when they don't realize they're being observed? It was very fascinating. And about halfway through the first episode, they were in Argentina, and they were filming a mother puma, cousin to the mountain lion cougars that we have up north. And this puma had along 4 pretty large kittens following it, and she was teaching them how to hunt at night, and completely oblivious to the fact that they're being filmed. They didn't look at the camera once. Of course, these people had some very long telephoto lenses as well. They were a ways off, but you're watching this, and it's after watching them showing bats and lizards and all kinds of different animals at night that are active. And what struck me about the puma was that the eyes glowed so bright on this particular species that it almost washed out the face. It was that bright. It was like, and I'm like, could that maybe be the answer? And then the narrator would go on to say that of all the animals they've seen around the world at night, the puma was unique in that even with no camera gear, with their bare eyes, they could actually, once their eyes adjusted to the dark, they could actually see the eyes of these cats just with the naked eye. Because the reason being is they have a very effective night vision. That tapetum lucidum layer I talked about earlier, this crystalline layer in the back of the eyeball, gathers in light. And because it's crystalline, it's not like a mirror where it's just going to go in and go out. It literally reflects all around inside the aqueous humor and hits those cones and rods, and more specifically the rods, which detect light and dark versus the cones detecting color. But they have more rods than animals without night vision. But what it does is it amplifies ambient light, even light that we as humans are limited to not being able to see. So just like sound, humans have their limits. We can hear to a certain pitch or high or low, but doesn't mean there isn't higher pitches or lower pitches, because there certainly are. So we're limited in our night vision. So what for us may seem dark, even pitch black, it's not that dark to them because of this mechanism that they have in their eyes. And so I just extrapolated that to our Bigfoot, and I thought, okay, humans, a deer, even this this puma, their eyeball is about the size, it's a little smaller than a ping pong ball. Okay. What if we extrapolate this to, say, something that has an eye the size of a tangerine? Okay. Now what you're dealing with is an even larger iris, a bigger opening, a larger pupil, if you will, a larger projector screen, if you will, in the back to collect that light. And you could take it on up to the size of a beach ball just to make a point. But if you've got the larger the aperture, the larger the opening in the eye, the more light it can gather in. Am I correct? Okay. So when you get to an eye the size of, a good size, perhaps, size of tennis ball, who knows? But we're talking a very much larger eye than most animals out there. It's going to have the effect of being able to amplify ambient light to the point, not that it's projecting it, it's literally reflecting it. Because if they're not looking at you, you're not seeing some beam going off to the left or right. It's only when they lock eyes on you that you can see them. That's another thing I was going to point out. You hear a lot about red eyes, red or orange eyes. I can attest to the fact they can get that way, but when they're staring directly at you, it is white. And once your eyes adjust to the dark, it's fairly bright. But when they start turning, when they start deviating their gaze from you to, say, somebody just standing next to you, you'll start to see that color change from say white to yellow to orange to red. But when they bring their vision back to you, it goes back to white. So that's my experience anyway, and I saw it a lot. So I am satisfied that I was able to check that block and find a scientific explanation because, like I said, I did some research. I just didn't dig deep enough. But once I saw it, I had no choice but to find an answer. And that's what I believe we're dealing with. It's just a larger eyeball, which makes a larger reflective surface, which brings in a lot more light, and it can bring it even the dimmest light that's normally below human detection. It can amplify it enough that you can, in fact, see it. If they're locking eyes with you, if they're staring right at you, you're literally looking through that pupil to that little screen in the back, that projector screen, being that tapetum lucidum layer in the back of the eye, and that's my explanation for it. I'm good with that. No, it's not projection; it's refraction. It's amplified light that they're able to amplify enough to the point where you and I can see it. That being said, that particular instance where I had to eat crow and take it out of this woo file, if you will, and put it into the scientific file and say, okay, I was wrong, and I found that it sent me down a rabbit hole to ask myself, I wonder what other experiences, descriptions, whatever, that I have put in that paranormal file. I wonder if there's anything else that I can find a scientific answer for, so that those that are in that camp, that paranormal camp, can feel that they've been vindicated to some degree. Because if I can give them a scientific answer, nobody's going to make fun of them. They go, oh, well, they can't disappear and reappear. There's one right there. The portals, the interdimensionality and whatnot, or they can't create orbs, colored balls of light, or they can't zap you. All those words, orb, zap, mind speak, eye shine. I'm going to change all those terms when I'm done with this, but be that as it may, it set me on a course to try to find answers, get on that third rail, if you will, between the science, biological, flesh and blood, and the paranormal, supernatural. Because I mean, if you think about paranormal, if you look at the definition of paranormal, supernatural, it basically means an effect that we don't currently have a scientific explanation for. And there's a lot of things we do have scientific explanations for today that at one point were paranormal. It's just a matter of being able to, for instance, to have the instrumentation to detect various things that, for all intents and purposes, aren't practical to science. They're not commercial. There's no money in it. So a lot of instrumentation that is needed to detect certain things, certain phenomena, either has yet to be developed or in some cases has. It just hasn't been applied in the case of the species. But so, I rolled up my sleeves and I kind of dug into that bucket of paranormal, and I just thought, okay, I'm gonna pull one out. I did it once. Let me see if I can, pull another rabbit out of the hat. So I looked into one that was I thought it was going to be impossible to explain, and that is what I spoke about just a moment ago, the capability of a disappearing or reappearing at random or at will, if you want, where people say, oh, they go into a different dimension, they go through a porthole into this, that, or the aliens pull them up or whatever, Okay, let's pull that out of the way and just look at it from a scientific perspective. And I'll tell you what got me on that track was I was driving my truck down the road. I've got a really nice stereo, and a song came on that I really liked, and I was by myself, and the song had a lot of bass in it, and I cranked it up, and pegged out. I wanted to hear this thing loudly, and in the process, I got to a point where I needed to change lanes. I go to look in my rearview mirror, and guess what? I can't make out the vehicles behind me because what? Because the bass notes are rattling my mirror. They're vibrating this solid object, this glass with a mirror finish on it, to the point where it's distorting my vision. Because I'm sure you've seen it. I think everybody has. So I literally had to turn down the volume, and as I did, all of a sudden the cars in the next lane start coming in a little more clear, and I was able to change lanes, and it got me thinking. Sound, okay, and bass sound in particular. Bass sound that we can hear can do that. I experienced it. So what if we take it down a notch to infrasound? Infrasound is below human detection. It's below human capability to hear, I should say, audibly. It's below 20 hertz in frequency. And so again, applying my first rule of thumb, show me another animal that can do this, and then maybe we got a starting point. Well, lo and behold, elephants do it, tigers do it, alligators do it, whales do it, hippos do it. There's a lot of animals that, and keep in mind, up until about 50 years ago, before they had the instrumentation to even detect infrasound, nobody knew they did this. It wasn't until the tools came available to science where they went, hey, you realize those whales are sending out these subsonic messages? Do you realize that, alligators, for instance, when they're in mating season, they can all be submerged underwater in a pond, but the pond could, when they're actually exhibiting this infrasound, which they use for a mating call, the surface of the water almost looks like it's boiling just from the vibrations they're able to create. So they use it for mating purposes. Elephants use it to communicate, and it actually it's transmitted through their feet usually by a bull in the herd. One of the things they use for instance, to call the herd together, and it's said that they can be 4 to 7 kilometers away, and other elephants can detect this infrasound traveling through the ground, and they pick it up through the soles of their feet. And that's a call for the group to mass together. That's the crazy thing about infrasound and bass sound in general. It's more physical than it is audible. And the deeper the sound, the lower the frequency, the more physical it becomes. Tigers, for instance, use it for hunting purposes. They can emit a guttural sound that is undetectable to humans. You could be standing right next to them, you will not hear it, but it puts out a physical wave that transmits through the air. It'll transmit through air, it'll transmit through water, it'll transmit through solid ground. But what happens is they may be near some prey, say a herd of antelope or what have you. When they emit this sound, the crazy thing about infrasound is the source is not detectable, because it's so it goes in every direction and it penetrates everything. And what it does in the case of hunting, say these antelopes, it puts them in a state of fear, a state of panic. They know something's wrong. They know the danger is at hand, but they don't know where it's coming from. It stuns them, and long enough that that delay, that hesitation, because they don't know which way to run, that gives that tiger the advantage to then chase them down. So infrasound works differently for different animals. In every case, there's a message embedded in that infrasound, obviously, different for alligators and whales and elephants and the tiger. But it is so when you buy a surround sound system, for instance, for your TV set or what have you, you get either a sound bar with a bunch of speakers in it, or you get separate individual. You'll get tweeters and woofers. They're directional. They reflect. Those frequencies are high enough that they actually bounce off the walls, the ceiling, the floors, furniture, what have you. But you only get one subwoofer. Why is that? Why do you get just one bass speaker and all these treble and mid-range speakers? It's because bass, again, the source is undetectable, and it penetrates everything. So you won't get bass reflecting off of walls or anything. It literally goes through the walls, through the floor, through the ceiling, and through you, just like infrasound. And that's why, for instance, I have my subwoofer sits behind my couch. When I'm watching TV, you don't know whether it's coming from the TV itself, let alone it's right behind me. But that's how low frequencies like that work. So let's put it together. We've got that example of other creatures. We can check that block, right? We know, and interestingly enough, mostly mammals. So that's a go. Mostly large mammals, in fact. Interesting. But you can imagine what sort of internal organs and probably lung capacity, throat capacity it takes to do this create this low frequency sound wave. So, I mean, we've got all the elements there, and then let's tie that in with my mirror vibrating. And what if Bigfoot can generate this sound, and for various reasons, but they have found it to be effective as a masking tool, for instance, a camouflaging tool. If they, and this is where I kind of get cross swords a little bit with my good friend Ron Moorhead, and we've known each other for decades. He's come out with this quantum theory about how their body physically vibrates to a frequency where they themselves can change into a different dimension. My theory, my hypothesis is they're not changing themselves, they're changing you. Okay, so let's go down that rabbit hole a little further. Can infrasound distort vision? Well, yeah, it can. In fact, that information, that data's been out for, would you believe, 70 or 80 years? Again, long before they had instruments that could detect infrasound. So when I tell you this, I like to say it's not rocket science, but actually it is, because it was a space program going back to the late 50s when they started with Mercury Redstone and Gemini rockets, capsules being placed on the tops of ICBM missiles, basically launching people into space. A strange thing happened. These astronauts, strapped to these missiles, were trained to, obviously stay in communication with ground control and read off the gauges and the instrumentation to let them know a number of different anomalies that go on. And one of the things that happened was they lost visual acuity during the launch. And, NASA's like, how many pounds of thrust are you showing? What's the oxygen levels? What's the pressure in the capsule? They're like, we can't read the instruments. And it wasn't until later they were able to kind of reverse apply, once they understood infrasound, and say, and understand that the rockets, the actual engines on these rockets they were setting up, were generating infrasound. And that infrasound was creating frequencies, very low frequencies, that were vibrating. That's right, their eyeballs, because liquid is probably the best medium for the transmission of sonic waves. And which is why whales can literally communicate for hundreds, if not thousands of miles, because once they initiate that sonic wave, there's nothing to stop it. And it just goes and goes and goes until another whale picks it up. But I digress. They found out that the infrasound generated by the engines on these rockets were that aqueous humor, that liquid inside your eyeball, perfect transmission medium, that frequencies going through the capsule and vibrating their eyes to the point where it looked like my rearview mirror on my truck when I cranked up the bass. But it's a sound they couldn't hear. It was a sound that they could feel. It was very, very physical. And so once they understood that, they had to recreate the engine systems, but more to the point, the astronauts' uniforms, their helmets, the insulation around the capsule to accommodate for that infrasound. But again, at the time they did it, they did not understand infrasound. But again, we can, once we developed the equipment to detect it, we were able to, oh yeah, that's what it was. They didn't know at the time, but they had to compensate for that by changing a lot of different designs. So what if Bigfoot can do that? What if you're walking, you're getting too close? Now I think they've got some very, very good natural camouflage, and mind you. But what if you're getting just a little too close, if they could put off this infrasound? Again, you're not going to hear it. But as you're looking in the direction they're at, it's going to work your eyeball. Not them. They're not vibrating. They're not physically changing one iota. What's changing is your eyes are getting pounded by shock waves, by subsonic waves that are causing your vision to blur as you're looking in the direction of where they're at. This would possibly account for why people claim that, hey, I was out there was nothing there, and all of a sudden something appeared, or vice versa. I was watching this creature, we locked eyes, next thing I know, they just vanished. They didn't disappear, they were still there. They generated infrasound and caused your eyeballs to vibrate. They've learned, probably with dealing with other animals in nature other than humans, they probably learned that, hey, I do this and I can get up on certain prey, for instance, without them knowing. I think it's something that they've developed over time naturally, and have observed the effects of it on other animals and applied it to humans. Why not? And in the case of them saying there was nothing there and all of a sudden this thing just appeared out of nowhere, well, maybe it was there all along, blocking your ability to see them clearly. I'm not saying you can't see them at all. I'm just saying, kind of like that whole predator thing, where they become almost translucent, where they blend into the background because your eyes are being buzzed, if you will. And but let's say they're there, and then maybe they feel comfortable. Maybe they realize you're not a threat, or maybe you've stopped moving in, encroaching on them. Maybe they tone it down, and all of a sudden, woo! Now they come into focus. You know, that's my way of trying to explain how they can appear or disappear without bringing in the woo, without bringing in the portholes and the interdimensional and the UFOs and all that stuff. I don't disagree that these individuals, I believe them to be very sincere and honest people. I don't doubt that they didn't have that experience. It's just their interpretation of how that happened. And, do a little more research, a little more homework, and you'll find there is a logical scientific reason to explain that.
Well, I think that's a very good possibility that could happen. Like you said, it already happens in nature. I tell you this, Mr. Ron Moorhead, number one, I believe him. I believe all the things that he said that he's experienced, but I can tell you it's one of the things, the experiences that he's had and that he's talked about is one of the things that's very hard for me to understand when it comes to this topic, because I do believe him. And you have things that have happened to him that seem like, I understand why he went down the road that he went down, because of some of the things like the floating long orb that he talks about. Looks like a floating lightsaber. I get like why he went the direction he went with a lot of this, but that's where it comes down to. I'm just wondering if just because there's two different phenomenon in an area, it does not mean that both of those phenomenon are the same thing.
Well, let me tell you, I've known Ron since 1996. We've been very good friends. I've had him on expeditions with me, going back to 1998, with Peter Byrne, up to 2016 on Operation Sea Monkey up in the Broughton Archipelago. Ron was with me. He and I actually, and Carrie, his partner, have actually spent a week cruising, sailing the British Virgin Islands. I know him very well, but I have seen him. I remember distinctly when he made that epiphany, if you will, started getting into the quantum physics. And I love him to death. But you know what? We can each have our own theories, our own hypothesis of notions of what may or may not be causing certain things to happen. But you touched on this orb thing, and so and I'm glad you did, because that was one of the little jewels I decided once I figured out this ability to come in and out of visual acuity, if you will, vis-a-vis the infrasound. I started going a little deeper with infrasound, and guess what I found?
What's that?
There was a company that built this brand new facility. I can't recall exactly what they were doing there, but this facility was full of machinery, and they were hiring people hand over fist to staff this new building. And from the very beginning, several of the individuals in certain areas of the building were freaking out, in that they said that they felt very uncomfortable. They don't know why. Some of them said that they would see unexplained movement in their peripheral vision. Some of them thought it might have even been ghosts or spirits or whatever. Some of them said they saw. It's like if he stared right at it, it was gone. But if it was always in their peripheral vision, they were getting this phenomenon that would create movement, light and movement, and even colored balls of light, as it turns out. They brought in, I swear, I've got all the references. It's going to be in my book. I'm finally writing a book. I'm way overdue, but it'll be in there, because what they found out, they brought in, by this time they had developed detection equipment, acoustic equipment to pick up infrasound, and they found out that a particular machine that was installed in that plant actually was generating infrasound. And when they switched it off, all these hallucinative events went away. But they specifically mentioned colored balls of light as an effect that was being had on the vision of people that were working in that particular department around that machine. You call them orbs, you call them whatever you want. It is a scientifically proven fact that, and if you want, I'll get you the reference, but it's a proven fact that infrasound can cause some visual anomalies that can manifest themselves in the form of colored balls of light. Okay, so let's take it back into the woods, if you will. We have an animal, a mammal, a large mammal, that, like other large mammals, is able to generate infrasound. What's to say that a Bigfoot generating that infrasound at night, possibly daylight, I don't know that really changes that peripheral effect that people had experienced. But what if a Bigfoot starts vocalizing, again, below human hearing, that infrasound, based on what they've discovered by certain machinery? Man can generate infrasound, by the way. We talked about the rocket engines were able to create subsonic vibrations, frequencies. So we know they can do that. Explosives, by the way, explosions can cause infrasound. In fact, when you talk about people fracking in the oil and gas industry, fracking is actually, they use explosives to create infrasound shock waves, and they have special infrasound detecting equipment that measure that bounce of those sonic waves coming back to the surface to determine, and are able to analyze that infrasound shockwave. So man can generate it. We know that the machinery that was put in that plant, we know animals can generate it. And so there's another possibility, and a lot of things can come back to infrasound. It's what I'm finding out. We talk about people being, for instance, being zapped, again, I hate that term, but where people, for seemingly no explainable reason, have a sudden panic attack, or sometimes to the extent that they can't even speak or move. They feel like they're being hit with something. Well, they are. Infrasound can really mess you up. Infrasound, again, can be generated by humans, but we know it can be generated by animals as well. I experienced this, I'm certain, and this is in hindsight, in 1998 when I was, in fact, Ron Moorhead and Peter Byrne were with me on that particular expedition at the base of Saddle Mountain, not far from where I had my 93 experience. And Peter had to leave, and Ron needed to take him down to where his car was at, and they were going to be gone for a little while. And it was while they were gone, I was emplacing these seismic ground sensors. That's kind of ironic. I hadn't really put that together, but I have these seismic ground sensors that'll detect footsteps, vibrations in the ground from anything walking near them. And I was calibrating these, installing these while they were gone. A hailstorm came in. I decided to take shelter underneath some old growth trees that were just uphill from me. Wait for this hail shower to pass, and then get back to work. And while I was up there, Mother Nature called, and so I had to pee and did that. And when I was just, and I only mention that because I think it plays into this. I was just fastening the buckle on my belt when I got hit. Not just I was roared at, and I'm talking a roar like, that MGM line, at the beginning of some of those movies, full volume, very similar to that, but just extremely ear splitting. And from a very short distance away, I froze in the position of buckling my belt, and I could not move for 2 minutes. I was literally paralyzed with fear. I thought that was just a euphemism. It's real. I was paralyzed with fear. Part of me wanted to run with everything I got, but there was something a little more primal that said, if you want to survive this, don't move. The last thing you want to do is run. And I really couldn't. I don't think I blinked for 2 minutes. I could hardly breathe, to be honest with you. And I felt like I was hooked up to a battery, if you will. I felt like my something was just coursing through me. But I, at the time, wrote it off as adrenaline, a rush of adrenaline, but a state of fear I don't ever really want to experience again, because at one point I described it as feeling helpless, but I later changed that to hopeless, because I literally at that point I knew that I was no longer in control, and whatever was out there was going to do whatever it wanted to, whether I wanted them to or not. I've never been at that level. Even in Iraq, we had rockets and mortars fired at us all the time. I mean, almost daily. That didn't even come close. I'd say the only comparison would be maybe being pushed out of a plane at 20,000 feet. That, without a parachute, by the way. That feeling of imminent doom and knowing how the movie is going to end. But
all right, wait. I know
Yeah.
I said I wasn't going to interrupt you, but you just said you were pushed out of an airplane without a parachute. Is that what you just got done saying?
No. I was making an analogy of the level of. Maybe I didn't make that clear. No, the only thing I can.
No, I thought maybe you went airborne or something, and then something happened. My bad.
I've jumped out a perfectly good working plane. No, I've skydived before, and I'm nothing. But I'm saying, imagine being pushed out of a plane at 20,000 feet, and the feeling of knowing that this is not going to end well, and wishing it would just come to an end sooner than this torturous fall that you're going on, and that's where I was at. That's how it felt to me, that this is it. This is it. I'm done. But I felt I had chalked it up to being adrenaline. That maybe that's what I was feeling, because it really was coursing through my whole body. And now, in hindsight, looking at what I've learned about infrasound, I'm convinced that I experienced in that moment what a lot of people have described as being quote unquote zapped. And similar to that of, how tigers can cause somewhat of a paralysis of a herd of antelope, putting them in a state of panic that causes them to not be able to react the way they want to. I was there, and I believe infrasound has that ability to overwhelm you to that point. How many times have you heard people talk about, hey, I was walking in the woods on my favorite trail. I've walked this trail 100 times, with my kids, and then I feel at home, and all of a sudden the hair on the back of my neck started to stand up, and the hair on my arms, and all of a sudden I don't feel good. I feel a very negative something. I know subconsciously that if I continue in this direction, there's going to be some really not very pleasant consequences. And they turn around. They stop. And it could have been, someplace new, but it could be someplace they'd been to, hiked many times before in the past, a place that they were normally comfortable. All of a sudden they have this completely unaccountable panic attack. I believe that is infrasound, and I believe they again, having experimented with other animals that they have come in contact with, and seeing, depending on that volume or amplitude, if you will, of that infrasound, it'll have different effects. And I mean, infrasound, if it is ever brought up to volume 10, can kill you. And if you think I'm kidding, I'll give you an example. They have discovered that you've been to a concert and they have these gigantic speaker tower, stacks of speakers, and huge, a lot of woofers, giant woofers, and horns and all that, and they have found that people, and again, keep in mind, this is bass, very, very low bass, but this is bass we can hear, has this effect, that people who stood within 10 to 20 feet of these speaker towers have been injured in numerous ways, up until and including their lungs collapsing. Because you can imagine, these bass notes aren't just hitting you and bouncing off you, they're going right on through you. And what do you have inside? A couple of balloons called lungs that are hollow. And all of a sudden they're getting hammered by these shock waves, the sonic shock waves at close range. People have gone to the hospital from concerts because they were too close to those big bass woofers, those subwoofers that you see at concerts. So I'm not saying Bigfoot can take it to that level. And again, the insidious thing is those guys that got injured could hear and, of course, feel the bass. In the case like this, when we're talking infrasound, you're getting the physical effects, but you're not getting the audible effects. It's just like imagine standing in front of a giant speaker, and they'll put it this way. It'll affect a deaf man just as much as it will you. But guess what? Neither one of you are going to hear it. Okay? You're going to feel it, and it can put a world of hurt on you. And it just depends on, I imagine people that got too close in some cases got volume 1, maybe volume 2, hair standing on this angst, this this unexplained panic, this anxiousness, unexplainable. Those that got a little closer, like myself, and peeing, marking their territory, not a good thing. That set it off. And I believe that set it off because I've talked to about 6 or 7 people now that had something crazy go on just right after they urinated. But anyway, I think that they can control the amplitude. And again, volume 10, you still aren't going to hear it. But volume 10, you don't want to be around for that show. But I think they can use it. They can use it to scare you off or cause you to hesitate and maybe turn around and leave. They can use it to the point where they could make your eyeballs vibrate. It's your whole body's vibrating. Don't get me wrong. They're not like aiming at your eyeballs. I'm just saying you're getting hit with the sonic waves that are causing your vision to blur. You know, so orbs, zapped, disappearing. Hey, we can take that one more notch. How about all those blurry damn ass pictures we all get and that have to have red circles drawn around them? Perhaps infrasound has something to do with that too.
Well, let me ask you a question. I just, on my own personal channel or my group channel, the Sasquatch Encounter Brigade, I was looking at my phone. The story you just told about being roared at is almost exactly the same thing that happened to me after like 2 years of chasing these things. And I had rocks thrown at me. It got within 10 feet of me without me knowing, or not 10 feet of me, after about 10 minutes of me looking around for this thing, and I did not find it. I thought I was in the clear. It was gone. It got within 30 feet of me, and it growled at me. And instantly, just like you, it scared me so much I could not move. I was holding a thermal to my eye, looking over in a wood line, and it growled. And just like you, the name of the video is When a Sasquatch Gets Too Close. And just like you, I could not move. The only thing I could do was take my eye away from the thermal just enough to look in that direction. And I was waiting on impact. I didn't know what was going to come next. But it had me dead to rights. I knew that. Instantly, all my doubt was gone at that moment in time. I knew when I heard that growl. I've actually got that growl. I've been growled at 3 times, and I think it's by the same one. The third time, I've actually got a recording of that growl.
Really?
Yes, I do. And it's just scared me. But the thing is, let me ask you this. I was recording with the thermal, okay? Obviously too scared to move. At this point, I was just trying to prove it to myself, right? Still didn't really believe in them. But I went back through the video. And at the same exact time, unfortunately, it does not have audio. It's the TK Scout, so it did not record audio.
I have the same one.
But I can tell by the movement and when it happened and when I backed out, I know exactly in that video when I was growled at. And what's super weird, and I don't ever bring it up very often because I just don't go down that road, is right when that growl happens, there's 3 slash marks that go right down the middle of the screen. There is nothing out in front of me that should be producing these 3 slash marks at all. There's nothing but small pine trees, saplings out in front of me that are nowhere near as big. It looks like basically 3 floating logs that are out in front of me, and they're going at an angle. And it just happens for a split second.
Now, were they putting off heat? Were they generating a heat signature?
They are. Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's the confusing part. is there's nothing there to actually produce those 3 slash marks, but it shows up in the video as 3 heat signatures that go at an angle, one on top of the other. And my question would be, obviously, is does infrasound affect electronics? Is there something that could have happened that could have made the actual unit itself malfunction? Because it's just as plain as can be. I'm looking straight, and I even took into account movement. Like maybe I just moved too much, and yes, obviously there's movement, but movement does not explain the 3 obvious lines that go down at an angle. I'll just have to send it to you and let you take a look at it. But have you heard anything like that? Have you gone down that road? Do you think infrasound could mess up electronics like that?
I can tell you from experience, and not just mine, but experiences others have shared with me, that there seems to be. I got to be careful here because it's just one of those that are still in the bucket I haven't pulled out and been able to explain, but there has been numerous, and I mean many, situations where electronics have failed either audibly or visually, that some sort of anomaly occurs that causes certain things to malfunction, which is one that really bothers the hell out of me. There's a couple of them out there that just, I don't, either I'm not ready to or I don't want to look, but I've had things happen. I could think of one time in Castle Rock, Washington, where I had my night vision go down, and I check every time I go out, because I've learned the hard way. You pre-check everything, and I make sure everything is fully charged or has brand new batteries in it. I had my night vision go down. I had my FLIR go off, like it ran out. Uh, Even my radios, when I tried to call it in to some other people, just flat out stopped working. Couldn't work. I don't know. During Operation Sea Monkey, we basically we were on a 50-foot trawler that we'd anchor about 100 yards offshore, and we had 2 inflatable Zodiacs we would take to these different islands, different days, and set up gear. And we had 4 of us. It was myself, Tom Seawood, a videographer, and Thomas Steenberg. We had gone on to this island, and we'd just got in a little ways in from the shoreline, and where we're setting up some game cameras, and we're being filmed doing this by our videographer, Victoria. And she just, I don't know. I guess she kind of went into this panic attack that it didn't seem to affect the other of us, the 3 guys there, but she freaked out. She was like, I got to get out of here. We got to go. We got to go. But before she did, I was placing one of these seismic ground sensors. And it's basically a spike you put in the ground. It's a military issue. You put this spike in the ground. It's got like a 6-foot lead. It goes to a transmitter. It's got 5 sensitivity settings on it. And anyway, I was setting that up, and she was filming, set that up. And she just started losing it. And so we hurried up and we got everything in place. And then we'd go back to the trawler and then take shifts over the night, scanning the beaches with very expensive infrared cameras. But we got out of there. The next day we went back and picked up the gear, and then she had downloaded that scene where we were putting up cameras and the sensors, and we're watching it. on a laptop, and right about it's what actually it was while I was starting to in place this transmitter, and right about the time she freaked out, the audio that's very clear through the whole thing, bringing the boat to shore, pulling it on shore, walking, talking, and all this stuff, and then getting up on the shore to set this stuff up, clear as a bell. But right at about the point she lost it, the audio goes into a high pitched squeal, and it went for the rest of the whole time we were on the island, and we didn't know it. She assumed it, she was listening in the headphones, she was hearing everything, but on the actual uh, uh, device, that the recording chip or whatever she had in that thing, it was pretty high end camera. When we went to play it, everything from that point, and I thought, hey, maybe it, you know what? Because I'm again Mr. Science here. I got to find an answer for everything, and I'm thinking, let's rewind that, because I'm thinking maybe it was right when I turned on that transmitter. Because some audio, you can be transmitted like wireless mics and whatnot. Maybe it just there was an interference signal or something. Then we went back and watched it, and I had not yet even turned on that transmitter when that every bit of audio from that point on just went into a high pitched squeal. We never were able to explain it, and the camera worked fine after that. But it's just weird that it coincided with this panic attack that Victoria had when we were out there. But I've had other equipment go down. It's a very good question. And there's got to be an answer. And that's all I can say about it.
Yeah, I know we're just guessing when it comes to this kind
maybe
of.
the thing is, well, oh yeah, nobody's got it all right yet. I'm just saying that would be a great one to maybe try to recreate the situation. I don't know if you can get all the parameters the same, but I mean, or even, can we? This is kind of out of our pocketbooks, out of our budgets, but I would love to have something that, some sort of device that I know can create infrasound to take in the field. Better yet, I'd also like to have something that can detect it. That's the problem with science is if it's not practical, if it's not commercially viable, or medically necessary, science, they don't generally bother to. It's like, why would we be trying to record sounds that we can't hear? It's like buying tasteless food or invisible paintings. There's no application for it. So somewhere down the line, somebody comes up with something and go, hey, this stuff's going on, and it probably explains a whole lot of crap we never understood before. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if such a device is available. It'd be kind of cool to have one in the field, just in case something like that. If you were out there and all of a sudden this equipment starts showing that there's infrasound in the area, and you're in the middle of the woods, that would pretty much clear up that, right?
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot out there we don't know. That's a kind of the cool thing about Bigfooting is for every answer you find, it seems to generate a dozen more. Yeah. But that's okay. That's okay. It's fun. But we'll pick them off one by one and try to figure them out along the way.
Well, you seem to be doing a pretty good job so far. Richard, sir, do you have any questions for Mr. Neiss that I haven't thought of?
All my questions go way back to the very first encounter that he discussed at the beginning.
Yeah, that's
never got a chance to take a pause and ask some questions there. So I don't want to go all the way back that far and revisit all that. So,
well, let me throw another one at you. Let me throw another one at you. This is an experiment that I'm going to be doing. Again, this goes along with the cloaking, invisibility sort of a thing. This is something I came up with, again, going back to what's my first go-to? Show me an example in nature. So is there an animal out there that has a natural camouflage capability that makes them almost become invisible? Well, we can look at all kinds of things like octopus and squid and chameleons and all kinds of different things. But we got to talk about, is there a large mammal Because, you know, you go up the food chain, you go from, you know, phylum to kingdom to family to species and genre. And it's like, okay, we got to get in, at least in the mammal family, if we're going to apply this. Is there a large mammal, any mammal, that can literally change color that we know of? Well, did a little research, found out, oh, yeah, the polar bear. The polar bear. The polar bear is not white. What? Sure it is. We see them all the time. They're white. No, they're not. Polar bear has a very unique coat of fur. The main part of a polar bear's fur is actually fairly tan, and in and of itself, out in a snow field, would stand out like a dirty snowball, right? But somehow they blend in with the ice and the snow, and gives them the ultimate camouflage in that environment. How do they do it? The hair, the fur of a polar bear has some guard hairs. These are hairs that extend out beyond the base coat of fur. And these guard hairs, they found, are absolutely clear shafts of hair. There's no cortex. It's under light. You can see through it. In fact, I've seen a few samples of purported Bigfoot hair that have a mix of dark hairs and clear hairs in them. But what this does for the polar bear is it acts very similar to that of a fiber optic line, if you will. It as it extends beyond the main coat of fur, it now becomes an outer layer of fur, if you will. Those clear shafts of hair pull in the ambient light and color around that bear, thereby giving the outer fur the shade of white because of the environment they're in. Okay? It also has a secondary feature, which is kind of cool, is that it'll pull, because of the way it's constructed, it will pull that light and heat into through the base coat and down to its skin, which, by the way, is black. The skin of a polar bear is black. Okay, so there's my go-to. I've got an animal with these extended guard hairs that are clear, translucent hairs. So I've got a large mammal that can camouflage because of the way that those guard hairs pull in the ambient light and color around it. Can we apply this to the Bigfoot? Well, here's my answer. I have bought, that's 100 feet of fiber optic line. Now it's about, I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's about the same width of, say, maybe a 60 to 80 pound fishing line. But this is fiber optic wire. Okay. I can touch light to it and it will transmit the light all the way through it. Okay. These are my guard hairs. You probably didn't notice, but what I'm sitting on is the pelt of a North American black bear. This is your Ursus americanus. Best I can do to simulate Bigfoot hair. But right now it's my seat warmer and I like it. But what I plan to do is take that pelt, start cutting my guard hairs, quote unquote, thousands, as you can imagine. I've got 1,000 feet of it. I got 10 of these 100-foot spools of fiber optic wire. And I plan to take half of that pelt and methodically stick these translucent hairs through the back of the hide and extend it maybe a half inch beyond that of the actual pelt, which, as you can see, is black, dark brown to black almost, right? And then I plan to take it out and put it in different positions and under different lighting conditions in different areas in the woods. And if my theory is correct, and I could be wrong, but if my theory is correct, half of that pelt is going to be very, very difficult to see. Because if these fiber optic hairs do what I believe they'll do, it's going to bring in the surrounding colors and light of whatever's around that pelt. And half of that pelt will be very, very difficult to see if you're able to see it at all. So that's just one of those outside the box things I'm working on to try to explain again how they are so hard to find and how they seem to appear and disappear. It may be that this is a potential answer for that.
Well, interesting enough, I've looked at that myself with the polar bears, and ones that are raised in captivity, they will get I believe like an algae on their hair.
Yep.
And you swear you look at the bear and you're looking at a green bear. It's pretty. Their hair is super fascinating, and that'd be great to see how your experiment. I think you're on the right track with that. That's pretty interesting.
Well, like I say, nobody's got it right yet, but everybody's kind of using the same tools and the same methodology. We've got to come up with different ideas, different theories, different experiments like this to see if we can't figure out how these things operate.
Agreed, 100%. What do you think, Richard?
Oh, absolutely. But that comes with money.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the barrier to entry with some of this stuff, unfortunately, is the financial aspect of it.
The worst word you hate to hear is self-funded.
Mm-hmm.
I like the greatest nation in the world, donation.
Well, Todd, man, I have a feeling that there's a lot more that you could, tell us, and you probably got a lot more stories. We need to have you on again for a.
Be my honor,
man. I'd love to have, because like I said, how long have you been doing this? 31 years.
I'll be 32 years in April. Yeah.
Man, I've been doing this all together like only 7 years, and maybe only 5 of those years was actually trying to prove to other people that they exist. So 31 years, that's a long time, man. But we do appreciate it. Before we go, Richard, any more questions? What were you going to ask him about his sighting?
Well, the two questions I had was when he was saying, how they say that the Sasquatch, rocks back and forth.
Right.
What do you? I hear different theories on what that is. I've heard it's like a baseball player. He's kind of like he can go at any direction at any moment. See what I'm saying? He needs to sprint back to first, or he can go to second base, or
right.
A good one is Christopher Noel about the autism. That they have more of a savant. They're very intelligent. They see things differently. And that's one of the signs is that motion, that rocking back and forth. But what in your mind, what do you, because you hear it a lot.
Yeah, you do.
And one of the key things I know, Johnny knows, and everything else as hunters or past hunters, is this sight sees movement first before it sees color. And if something moves in the woods, you're going to spot it. And so if this thing is rocking back and forth, it's kind of giving away its position in a sense. See what I'm saying?
Well, that's kind of a two-edged sword, because let me give you an example. Let me back up the bus a little bit. Initially, I brought this subject up with a primatologist who at the time lived in Oregon by the name of Henner Fehrenbach. He worked at the Oregon Primate Center just outside of Portland. And I asked him, as a primatologist, I explained to him what I observed, and he told me that, he said, in primates, more specifically, because humans are primates, but in primates, hominids, it's very common that when they are excited or anxious, that you'll see a lot of Pongianists do that. They'll tend to do that. And you make a good point, is that maybe it kind of is giving them some options. I have a different theory, though. Not that they wouldn't do that as an emotional response to stimuli. We're blowing up their woods, right? I mean, that'd get me a little anxious. I have another theory. And I was just out with a group called the Arkansas Bigfoot Cartel 2 weekends ago, and in one of their research areas, and I brought one of the guys over, and this was heavily forested. But of course, at this time of year, the hardwoods, all the leaves are off of them. You got a bunch of sticks, right? But you got a forest full of pretty much bare trees. Okay. I said, I want you to stand here. I said, I want you to see that one tree there, the one's kind of leaning a little bit, like at about 11 o'clock, right? Okay. Yeah. I said, tell me how far that is. He said, I don't know, maybe about 75 feet. Pretty good guess. How about that one back there, way back there, that one that looks almost black, that dark tree standing I'd say 200 feet. Okay, and how about that one across the road way down there? I don't know, maybe 350, 400. I go, okay, what you're looking at right now is a very two-dimensional view. Now I want you to do this. Rock like this. Now what do you see? And it's very basic. It's very simple, but here's what happens. The trees that are closest to you when you're moving your line of vision are moving faster than the ones in the distance. And the farther back beyond, say, 100 feet, 200 feet, 300 feet, the farther you go back, as you go side to side, those trees in the very back don't hardly move at all. And everything in between, as it comes closer to you, seems to move a lot faster. And what it does is it gives you a field of view of depth perception. It takes that two-dimensional view of standing there and looking at something, and now makes it three-dimensional, and you can gauge distance a lot better. So if you're looking at a deer, for instance, you're like, how far is that? Well, if you're standing there like this, you may get a pretty close guess. But if you go like this, you see what I'm saying is that you get a better idea when you start kind of in your mind measuring, well, per 50 feet, trees are moving this much in comparison to the tree right in front of me. So therefore, just in your back of your mind, you can say, well, at 200 feet, they're probably moving. Pretty soon you're getting a better idea of the distance you are from you to whatever subject you're looking at. See what I'm saying? So, and everybody I did that with, they all kind of went, yeah, you're right. It does kind of, you can definitely gauge distance a lot better by just doing this rocking back and forth thing, because it adds that third dimension. So I don't know, I think it'd be a pretty useful tool for them, especially when they're trying to gauge distance of a human or perhaps some game that they're looking at. Just a thought.
Now, are you still in contact with the sergeant that also had the sighting?
I am.
And do y'all still talk about it? Y'all
Well,
still bring it up?
Yeah. I put on a conference every year, something I came up with in 2008. You might have heard of it. It's called Beachfoot. It's kind of a weird name, but it's a play on names because I hold it along the Oregon coast. And so Bigfoot, Beachfoot. Crazy name, stupid, I know, but it was a concept I came up with where I thought, I've gone around the country, different conferences, and spoke dozens and dozens of conferences all over the U.S. and Canada. And it's one thing to do that, to talk in front of a paying audience, and you almost feel like you're performing, as opposed to what we're doing. It's just, mano a mano. It's casual. We're having a good old talk. We might as well be around a campfire. And that's where I thought, what would it be like to get all these people that I've met over the years, the Peter Burns, the Renata Hinnans, John Green, Professor Grover Krantz, Meldrum. I've known them all. If I could get them all in one room at the same time, just imagine the brain trust, probably a couple hundred years worth of research all in one room. And I just took it up a notch and said, well, what would be better than that is to get them all together in a camping environment with no audience, private invitation only, no media, no audience, no vendors, just researchers in a casual outdoor environment for 4 days, 3 nights, camping, bonfires, meetings, discussions, speaking to each other. Nobody's getting paid, and I'm not making any money. I make up a budget, I pass the hat, we split it all up. It's not about the money. It's about getting these guys together where they don't feel like they have to perform, where they can be there. And Jeff has been at more than half of those. We keep in touch quite often. What I didn't point out, which I probably should have, was at that time when we were doing the demolition training, I was sergeant in the National Guard. In other words, I had a day job, and so our next drill, that was in April. Next drill would have been in early May, and we actually had 2 more soldiers independently admit that they had also witnessed what Jeff and I had. So it wasn't just myself and Jeff. Ultimately, we would come to find, at least, and I say at least because as well as I do, most people don't share that kind of thing. Most people, stand a lot more to lose than to gain to come forward publicly to, risk that humiliation, people questioning their sanity or their honesty or whatnot. But we know of 2 other individuals. So that makes a total of 4 eyewitnesses to this case. Now, I got this information on these other 2 individuals secondhand, so I was not able to actually meet with them. But I do know that in fact happened, that they did come forward, and they described the same thing, the exact same number of creatures, same description and everything. So, but yeah, as far as Jeff's concerned, Sergeant Martin, yeah, we keep in touch all the time. In fact, he called me just a couple of weeks ago. In fact,
is he doing his own research?
Actually, no. He took a different route. He still lives back in that area. But I have not known him to get really involved in the research. I do invite him to Beachfoot just because he is an experiencer, and people like to kind of pick his brains and chat with him as well. And we've been friends for so long. We both really went through that together. So yeah, but people, different strokes for different folks. You gotta understand, it took me a long time to even tell another individual, not even a family member, or a good friend. To me, my research was very private, and I decided I was just gonna, stay in that Bigfoot closet forever. But it wasn't until I met Peter Byrne, and he took me seriously. He came out, investigated my site, and we ultimately became very good friends for the next 30 plus years. Unfortunately, we lost him last year, but he was a great mentor for me, and he got me, he encouraged me to come. He said, look, this is a great mystery to solve, and you need to be a part of it. And he encouraged me, and I did. And now Jeff just kind of went back to being Jeff and earning money, doing what he does. And
yeah, it affects people differently. Some people it scares out of the woods completely, and then other people become completely and totally infatuated with them, and
well, I had decided to keep it to myself for a long time. And like I said, and for me, it was very personal. I feel very blessed to have been able to see them. I completely grasped the concept that it had been 5 minutes earlier or 5 minutes later, or had I been looking in a different direction or engaged in conversation with the A driver up front, or so many things had to come together at just the right conditions for what I saw
Oh yeah.
to happen. And so for me, I began to look for a purpose, because I can't believe that just something that it affected me so personally
Like
and
it
for
happened for a
so
reason,
long.
right?
So I've looked for a purpose, and that purpose is pretty well cemented in the nonprofit organization that I run, the American Primate Conservancy, and keyword is conservancy. While it's very personal for me to want to see them again, and I've been blessed to see them at least on a couple of occasions, I also feel that it would be selfish of me not to want that for other people, and to want to ensure that it as long as those odds were that those things came together for me to see them, and how rare it is to do so, I would like those odds to stay at least uh, as they are. And in other words, I want to make sure that my children and grandchildren and great grandchildren have just as good of a chance of seeing them as I did. And the only way we're going to do that is to try to take steps to ensure that there are laws put in place to protect them, to prevent them from, to make sure that their habitat, whatever it is, their resources they need are always available to them, and to basically, the only way that's going to happen is for them to be officially recognized. So that's the course I'm going through with the Conservancy, is to get them officially, scientifically, taxonomically classified as a viable species, and only then can we get protections brought in place. A
Not
lot of
like
people
that.
out there say, "Oh, leave them alone; they're going to be fine." But you know what? We don't know that. We don't.
As soon as it comes out like that, it's fully acknowledged, they automatically go on the endangered species list. They have to. See what I'm saying? There's just not there,
Have you studied that? Do you know what organization gets to make those calls?
no, no.
I have, and it's a process. But yeah, there can be an emergency moratorium put on not only uh, researching them, but even quarantining a specific area where they are known to be at that point. That's the time
Well,
when all the big guns are going to come in and probably push us citizen scientists to the side. But
right.
Oh yeah.
Well,
you
it's
know,
extremely difficult to see one in its first place. Look at you, 2 times in what it took, what did you say, 28 years to see it again? Now you got to get a count. We need to know how many. What it's going to be an
there are
impossible
so
task.
many questions. You gotta look at these, and this is what people need to slow their roll a little bit and look at this as if we're talking about an endangered frog.
Mhm.
Okay, everything you can apply. I do this all the time as just a mental exercise. If I see an article in the paper about a coelacanth or a southern right whale that was supposed to be extinct, or some other endangered animal, I'll clip out that article, or I'll copy it off the internet, and I'll go through and I'll just exchange the name of whatever animal they're talking about and plug in Bigfoot. And guess what? It reads pretty well. When they start talking about the certain, their habitat and their diet and this, that, and the other, that's the kind of format it's got to be in. We can't make this some sort of a mystical, legendary. We got to bring it home to practicality. This is a species.
Right.
Let's just. It's no different. It should be treated no different, I should say, than any other rare, threatened or endangered species.
I agree.
And as long as we kind of We got to pull it out of that legendary
Well,
supernatural
and
world and
it's
keep it real.
and I think it's sad because I'm anti this, but I think it will get to the point where one's going to have to be dispatched. I hate it. I hate it for it, but I think that's what it's going to end up taking for that veil to be opened.
Well, yes and no. Okay, so what you're talking about is a type specimen needs to be collected, and ideally one of each sex. You need to have that dimorphism between the sexual dimorphism between the two, because viva la difference, right? But there are differences between the male and female of species. Now, the International Union of Conservation of Nature, which is out of Stockholm, Sweden, is tasked. They're the ones that actually, that's the body that actually gets to measure the health of different species. They have what they call the red list. And within the red list, you'll find threatened and endangered. You'll also find perfectly good and extinct on either end of that. There are actually 9 different levels of health. Could say extinct in the wild, but there's still some in captivity, or extinct in captivity, or but there's all kinds. Look it up, the red list. Just type in red list, look it up. It gives you 9 different flavors of health of any given species. Again, threatened and endangered are only 2 out of 9, but their job is to not necessarily recognize a species. That's a different body that's out there that scientifically recognizes them, but they're the ones that measure the health and where they fit on that red list. But you're right. Part of that, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of, like with any animal, where do they live? What kind of climate? What altitude? What sort of food diet? What sort of plants they need? Are there certain enzymes in something that we wouldn't eat, but they do?
Metabolism.
Are we losing some of those resources without even knowing that it has a negative effect in that whole Bigfoot biosphere? There's we got to answer a lot of questions, right? Okay. Yeah. There's a lot of data that needs to be collected. Now, can an animal be designated as being threatened or endangered without a type specimen? 10 years ago, the answer is no. That has changed, at least in the case of one species. Believe it or not, from an extremely close up and clear photograph of a particular species that was submitted, it was determined that there was no question that it was a different species. Actually, it was a subspecies of another species that made it to the list. And I'll tell you too, if you look up the 1973 Endangered Species Act and have the time to read through that puppy, and that's, you're gonna need a lot of coffee. I've gone through it because I was looking specifically for exceptions to policy when it comes to protecting uncatalogued species. And believe it or not, there is a section in the endangered, written in 1973, that there's actually 2 different sections within that Endangered Species Act that literally refer to animals that are or species that have yet to be taxonomically classified, binomially classified. By that I mean the double name that Linnaeus, Carl Linnaeus came up with, like Homo sapien, Homo erectus, Homo habilis, Neanderthal, Cro-Magnon. 13 different species out there of human that were at one time. We're said to be the last of the Homo species. I think there's one more. I think they're missing one. Do I think
Yeah,
these are human? Absolutely. I don't know about you, but I've done the homework. There is no other answer. People have tried to say, "Hey, well, it's an ancestor of Gigantopithecus, Blackie." No,
I don't believe that. I think
No,
the
it can't
biggest
be.
giveaway for me is the intellect.
Yeah.
I think they probably have the closest intellect to humans that there is.
Yeah. Like proto-human.
Well, people ask me about their intelligence, and who am I? But I have, just on a more basic approach, what is intelligence? First of all, well,
That's all.
today,
It's funny you say that because I ask the same question. Let's define intelligence here. If
okay,
you're talking about
so
something,
we,
you know
we
what I
look
mean?
at we look at intelligence the way it's measured today, and we call it the intelligence quotient, or IQ, right? And we have a test, and I have an 87, I got a 120, whatever. Um, that is all based upon academic intelligence, okay? And let's face it, people 200 years ago wouldn't even probably register on the IQ test. But this is how we measure intelligence. I call it AIQ, academic intelligence quotient. But I believe there's something out there that I like to call PIQ, and that's primal intelligence quotient. And it is no less important, no less. It is the basic primal intelligence that humans used to have, but due to our sapience, due to our intellect, that somewhere along the line we got hit by the smart stick, and we have over time, using technology, made our lives more easy. We've gotten lazy. We we don't even have to hunt our food. We go to the grocery store. Better yet, we can get Uber Eats to bring it to us. Hell, it's just gotten too easy. And in the process, we have lost that PIQ. Guess what? They've got it in spades. They've always had it for millions of years. They don't need AIQ. In fact, I believe they intentionally steer clear of AIQ because it's the one reason that they survive today, and I think it's going to be the one reason they'll out survive us. And by that I mean this: you think of how technology has made our life so easy and made us, given us the
We're so
ability
smart, we're stupid.
well, we're so smart that we can wipe out the entire human race in a second.
Yeah.
Look, this is what I would say at a conference. I would say, if you want to compare AIQ to PIQ, the survival of the smartest. No, I don't think so, because let's say North Korea launches an EMP weapon over the United States, and within a second, our entire electric grid goes down permanently. Gone. I'll tell you what, within a month, 2 months, 3 months, a lot of people are going to die.
Oh.
And riots will break out. And in 6 months to a year,
Millions are gone.
probably a quarter of the population of humans will be dead.
Yeah.
No way for refrigeration, no way to air conditioning, no heating, no transportation. Everything that we have wrapped around us in the form of technology is going to be our undoing. But let me ask you this: how do you think an EMP device is going to affect Bigfoot?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not one bit.
Now who's smarter?
Yeah.
If they had ever gotten caught up into this intelligence, if they had wanted to become part of the Homo sapien species, they would have. They haven't, and I think that makes them smarter than anybody, because they've got that primal feral intelligence that will make them survive long after we're gone. Yeah. So that's how that species defined itself. That's how it distinguishes itself between us and them. I do believe they're human. I do believe they are of the Homo species, and I can prove it.
Well, let's hold that one, because we got to have you back. You know,
Okay.
we got to have you back because you have a lot of interesting things. You put some thought in my head. You have, and which
Sorry
is
about
good.
that.
I like thinking outside the box. You know, I don't just like to look stupid. I actually try to learn something too. So, you know, but no, it's been outstanding. You now hold the record for the longest show. That's
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, but hey, don't.
it's only show number 2.
It's only show number 2, so don't get excited.
Oh, well, there you go.
You had a low
Well,
bar.
hey, I'd be happy to give you a part 2 down the road. I
Well,
not just some of the theories and things I've been working on, but some of the experiences I've had. I'd just love to share it with you when we got more
we'd
time.
love to hear it. But 31 years of experience, it's hard to cram it in 2 hours. You know
Yeah,
what I
that's
mean?
what I was talking about before we got started.
Yeah.
You know, I want you to be able to, when you have that much, I know for me, I could probably talk for 4 straight hours on the things that I've learned, experienced, and the sightings, everything. That's really, when you break it down, that's only 5 years of experience. Now,
Yeah.
you multiply that by, you go up to 31 years, we're only scratching the surface,
Well,
so.
try to cram 31 and a half years, 32 years into 500 pages. That's where I'm struggling right now, because as I write this book, I've really got to I got so much in there. I got to throw that out. This will have to be in another book, because it's overwhelming at times
Yeah.
when I could just go off on one tangent, as far as, I could do a book on Bigfoot behavior, just period, or Bigfoot intelligence, or whatever, or, the physiology, or even the psychology, the mental state of Bigfoot. Animal behavior is something people don't look at. I'd love it when people try to stereotype these things. Are they nice? Are they mean? It's like, are people nice? Are people mean? I wouldn't want a UFO to fly by the Earth and judge the entire population species on one badass dude that they happen to run into. Okay, they have as many personalities as we do.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't want
When's
to
the
be
last
walking.
time when was the last time you drove past a pasture full of cows and go, I wonder what that one, the third one to the left with the big white spot on this, I wonder what's going through his head right now. No, you don't. But guess what? Every damn cow in that field is a product of its life experiences, and every one of them had different life experiences, and every one of them have different thought patterns, and every cow in that damn field is a different personality.
Right.
I know that sounds stupid. Everybody, you just look at it and go, cow, and move on. But no. So just like that, I read books on animal psychology and animal behavior, and there's some pretty books that don't have anything to do about Bigfoot, but you can apply these things, and you start to realize that that they are just as individual as every one of us.
I do the same when I research gorillas to give me the closest thing I can for animal behavior. But we'll definitely have to talk about that on another show where we can
All right.
get into the behavior.
Just one comment here. Robert Oregon says, Todd Neiss, you are a legend. I believe your sighting out here in Eugene, Oregon. Thank you, Robert.
Oh, well, thank you.
All right, Todd. Hey, seriously, we're 100% serious about having you back. Just whenever you want to get together again with Richard. He's the one that does I don't even want to have anything to do with trying to schedule people, because him and I overlap sometimes, just like we did with you, actually. You contacted me first, and then I wound up having to go out of town. A family member got in an accident. Well, then it just so happened that he contacted you off of a comment. So anyway, just
let's do it again.
You get time, let him know and we'll schedule.
All right.
But really appreciate it. And Richard, hope you have a great weekend, and everybody who's in the chat and everybody who will watch this, I appreciate you watching Sasquatch Unredacted. When is the next podcast? Richard, you got that scheduled?
we're taking a break for the holidays. So Mr. Neiss is the last one for 2024. And so we'll have another one on, and I'll announce as we get closer who the person is.
Right.
I do know who that is, and they've already agreed, and that will be on January 3rd. I believe January 3rd is a Friday. So, and then we've got another one set up later in the month, somebody and I think we're already into February.
Yep.
So
Well, good to go. Excellent. Thanks again, Todd. You have a great night, and we will talk to you again.
All right. My pleasure. Let's do it.
All right, man. Richard, excellent podcast, man.
Yeah, my bottom side was kind of
Yeah.